A very good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. Now, countries across the globe are wondering how can they resume their daily activities. Since yesterday, Sri Lanka too took certain measures to reopen certain parts of the country in a gradual manner, not all at once. Today in our news bulletin we will focus mainly on 3 points. As you can see, first we will speak about the daily livelihoods of the general public. Has activities resumed? How are people faring with the current curfew situation in the country? Also, we will speak about transportation. We're speaking about people traveling to work. What are the issues that they face? Has there been adequate transport provided to the general public? And finally, schools are still closed down. The education system in Sri Lanka. What's the plan for the future? We've got details of these stories and more coming up on Primetime News tonight. First, let's take a look at your top stories for tonight.
Elections Commission holds discussions with political parties on conducting the general election. Permission granted to transport passengers up to the number of seats in trains except in Colombo and Gambaha. Dengue and leptospirosis on the rise in Sri Lanka. Tensions flare at local government bodies over irregularities in the mechanism to provide concessions to the general public.
Onto those stories in detail now. A special meeting between members of the Elections Commission and representatives of political parties was held today.
Representatives from 34 political parties attended the meeting today. Discussions are due to be held with representatives from 23 other political parties tomorrow. We requested the Elections Commission to hold the election. We discussed matters surrounding the current health situation in the country and the issues before court.
It will only be a democratic election if the people have a need to vote at the election. But if the election is held for the need of power-hungry parties, I don't think that would be a proper representation of a democratic, free and fair election. If a democratic parliament is to be elected, these conditions must be satisfied.
There is an issue as to if an election can be held right now. The Elections Commission has the power to make the decisions, and we believe that their decision on the matter will be the final decision.
Except for a few, the majority at the meeting were of the view that holding the elections will give rise to many issues.
They have not made a final decision on the 20th of June. Also, there is no final decision on issuing preferential numbers. The chairman of the Elections Commission also said that this election would cost twice as much as the previous election. The estimate for the previous election was 7 billion rupees. He said that this figure would double. We discussed about 3 matters. Firstly, there is a risk of the virus spreading even more due to the elections. The safety of the officials involved in this process must be ensured. The right of the candidates to contest the election on a level playing field should also be ensured.
දේශපාලන ව්‍යාපාරවලට සමතරගකරුවන් ලෙස මැතිවරණ ව්‍යාපාරට තරඟවදින තියෙන අයිතිය තහවුරු වී යුතු තිබෙනවා.
This is the 4th time that we held discussions with the Elections Commission. At the end of these discussions as well, we came to a decision that this election cannot be held. I think about 5,500 million rupees was allocated through the vote on account. This will increase to about 15,000 to 20,000 million rupees. 20,000 million rupees is not a small sum of money. Now, if an election is held like this and we don't get a proper result, there will be an issue.
We asked for the preferential numbers to be given because we have to conduct a special campaign now, but we did not get a response.
According to the decision of the health authorities, the people's health must be considered first. As this is a matter of life and death, It is hard for politicians or the Elections Commission to take a decision regarding the lives of the people. We are strongly of the opinion that this should be done according to the decision of the health sector.
Only the draft of the health guidelines was submitted. It has not been finalized. When I asked about some of these points, the Election Commissioner said that it is extremely difficult to do some of them. Discussions on those matters have not concluded yet as well. We cannot hold an election without these things being finalized. In every country where the spread of this virus was politicized, it turned out into a crisis. In America, the president was the one who made the decisions, disregarding the advice of health officials. It is because of those decisions that the United States is now suffering.
How is Basil Rajapaksa, who is the organizer of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, going to be involved in the process of distributing food to the people amid this COVID-19 outbreak? There is a clear violation of election laws there. We told the Elections Commission that this is wrong. The Elections Commission must open their eyes to this and they must stop this. If a political activist and the founder of a party can go and distribute food items, this is a joke. We informed the Elections Commission regarding this as well. We asked the Elections Commission to act now as it is already too late.
Moving on to take a look at the current situation regarding the COVID-19 outbreak here in Sri Lanka. Another 23 COVID-19 patients were discharged after they made a full recovery today. This brought the total number of patients who have recovered from the viral infection to 366. The Ministry of Health said that the total number of COVID-19 cases in Sri Lanka now stands at 879. 504 patients are currently being treated for the virus. Now, although many state and public institutions resumed services today, many employees faced difficulties in traveling to their respective places of work.
The mechanism to gradually restore normalcy in the Colombo and Kampaha districts began yesterday. While many offices in the Colombo district have reopened, this is how safety regulations were followed at places of work. Many shops in other areas have also reopened. However, health regulations were not followed at some of these locations.
Until a vaccine for the virus is found, this country must be steered in the right direction to control the spread of this virus. When we speak about returning to normalcy, it must be termed as the new normal. It is not going to be the normal situation in the country before the 11th of March this year. The program currently in place is to bring Sri Lanka to the new normal. We can see that certain people are acting in an irresponsible way. If people act irresponsibly, we won't be able to control the spread of the virus.
While we opened up a considerable number of institutions yesterday, public transport was provided in a favorable manner. We saw that in many places transport services were provided fairly well. If that is not the case, steps must be taken to set things right. If this is not done, you might be putting yourself and other people around you at risk.
With daily lives of the public being restored to normalcy, much attention was focused on public transport services. Public transport services operated today only to transport state and public employees for essential services. According to our correspondents, only a limited number of public and private buses operated today. Many people were stranded on the road with no access to public transport services. Passengers in Kurunegala had pooled in money and made arrangements to travel to Colombo. Meanwhile, people entering the Kurunegala railway station were disinfected. Commuters between Mathura and Colombo also did not have proper access to public transport.
We saw some people saying that buses are not operating, but there is no problem like that. There was an adequate number of buses operating in all provinces other than the western and the northern provinces. We have increased the number of buses operating between 6% and 15%. We are asking for safety precautions to be followed for the safety of the passengers and not to protect the government. Therefore, the people must adhere to these regulations.
10 trains arrived at the Colombo Fort railway station today. Train operations will limit the number of passengers to the number of seats from tomorrow in all areas of the country except in areas where the curfew is still in effect. The Ministry of Passenger Transport Management said the decision was reached at a meeting today to streamline transport services for both public and private sector employees who are returning to work following the easing of the curfew. The ministry said train tickets will be issued only when a passenger produces a company ID card. It added public and private sector employees reporting to work will be given priority.
Transporting passengers based on the number of seats in a bus will not be an issue. Permission will be granted for it. We have been advised to implement it on a district level and not go beyond. We have agreed to the requests that have been made to purchase tickets and travel on the train instead of booking your seats. Also, it is necessary to confirm that you are an essential service provider either from the private or public sector. Passengers are allowed to travel between if permission is sought from the head of the institution they are attached to. That is not valid in the areas where curfew is still in effect. We reiterate the need of entering buses from the rear entrance and exiting from the front entrance. We have also advised bus drivers to provide passengers with ample time to board a bus without touching others.
Meanwhile, private bus owners met with the minister and asked for a concession to be given to commence the private bus services once again.
What I have to say to the passengers is call 1955 and ask the National Transport Commission for a bus. Our buses which have the interprovincial permission are ready. There are buses which are permitted to travel on the roads of the provincial councils. We are ready to transport these passengers to their workplaces. We urge them to give us a concession through insurance companies. As of now, we are bearing a huge loss. Although there is a massive crisis in this industry and the passengers will not properly use the transport system for at least a year. Therefore, we made a proposal to the minister citing the need of a new service. They made their requests. One group asked for a fuel concession. Another group said that it is not necessary for them. Associations requested to provide them with 1.5 of the bus fare to resume operations. We will consider all those requests and consult the cabinet and provide them with the concessions we are able to.
Taking into consideration the reopening of economic activity in the world, followed by the easing of some travel restrictions between countries, Sri Lankan Airlines is now offering services to passengers who are eligible to travel under the respective country travel advisories to London, Tokyo's Narita International Airport, Melbourne, Hong Kong and beyond. Currently, most governments are allowing travellers stranded overseas to return to their countries subject to the stipulated validity of the respective travel documentation and periods of quarantine. Sri Lankan Airlines will offer passengers this special travel scheme commencing from the 13th of May.
Secretary to the Ministry of Education, NHM Chitrananda, said the decision on when schools will reopen will be made after notice on the matter is given by the government. When the government notifies us on the matter, we will announce the date on which schools will reopen. This date will be decided based on the recommendations of the Ministry of Health and the Director General of Health Services. If we are to maintain social distancing, we will have to only bring back a fraction of the students. As the advanced level examinations are coming up, these children will be given priority. Afterwards, students due to sit for their ordinary level exam will be brought back, and then the students sitting for the grade 5 scholarship examination. But we need to decide on whether we will bring these students to school or not. My personal opinion is that scholarship students should be brought back to school on a later date. The Honourable Minister will hold discussions on the matter and make a decision. We hope to cover the work that was missed during this time period and then hold the examinations. We might have to change the dates of these examinations. We have not yet decided if the date can be changed. We will decide on when schools can reopen after the government makes an announcement.
The European Commission has delisted Sri Lanka from its list of high-risk third countries with anti-money laundering and countering the finance of terrorism strategic deficiencies in 2020.
Sri Lanka was listed as a high-risk third country by the EU in February 2018, subsequent to Sri Lanka being identified by the Financial Action Task Force as a jurisdiction with strategic AML-CFT deficiencies in its compliance document, which is more commonly identified as the Grey List, in October 2017. Upon listing, a time-bound action plan to address the strategic deficiencies identified was assigned to Sri Lanka. Since the listing by the FATF, the Financial Intelligence Unit, together with other stakeholders, had taken a series of effective and tangible steps to implement the FATF action plan well within the given time frame. Accordingly, the FATF delisted Sri Lanka from its compliance document, also known as the Grey List, at its plenary held during the 13th to the 18th October in 2019 in Paris.
The total number of COVID-19 patients worldwide now stands at 4.2 million, 288,000. On to your weather update for tonight. The Met Department forecasts more showers in most parts of the island in the coming days. We're now joined by Azra Ahsan for the latest weather update.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Center. Taking a look at the weather forecast for the next few days, the prevailing rainy condition in the country will enhance over the next few days, mainly due to the atmospheric disturbance in the low atmospheric area of the country. Because of this situation, heavy showers can be expected in the central, southern and also in the Wu province and also in the Ampara district. Now the Met Department says that during this prevailing weather condition, strong winds can also be expected. Meanwhile, according to the Indian meteorologists, the disturbance prevailing in the atmospheric area near the Bay of Bengal will convert into a low pressure area from tomorrow.
Minister of Health Pavitra Wanyarachi warned of the spread of dengue due to the prevailing rainy condition these days. 50% of COVID-19 patients do not show any symptoms. They contract the virus, recover and go home. But when you contract dengue and cannot recover from it, it becomes a huge issue. Therefore, we have to give considerable amount of attention towards dengue as well.
As the rainy season is upon us, leptospirosis is raising its head in the Kegaul district. It was confirmed at a media briefing held at the office of the Kegaul District Director General of Health Services that 3 people have died of leptospirosis so far. As of now, 79 patients have been reported. We inform the general public of the spread of leptospirosis along with the spread of COVID-19. Before you reap the harvest this season, please take the prescribed doxycycline. Until the end of the season, you have to take 2 pills a week. We make a request not to engage in agricultural activities if you have any cuts or wounds. Also to admit yourself at a hospital if you have fever. If you had engaged in agricultural activities without taking your medication, you should definitely mention that at the hospital before you receive your treatment, because when the condition becomes critical, it will be difficult to treat patients.
Is it really the right time to hold a general election? Here are some of the views expressed by politicians on the matter.
The election must be held, but before that the people of the country must be protected. The number of corona patients are not announced properly. The new cases are only announced after 10 p.m. Many of the people who die are said to have died of rat fever. We don't know if people in Gunasingapura are engaged in farming, but people there too are dying of rat fever. Initially, people were told not to hide symptoms of this virus, but now the government has begun to hide the number of patients. So instead of hiding the number of patients and making this a crisis, we request the government to give priority to safeguarding the lives of the people and consider holding elections as a secondary matter.
The United National Party has a very simple hidden agenda. If the UNP is to unite, the nomination lists must be cancelled. The nominations can be cancelled only through an act of parliament. That is why they are requesting for parliament to be reconvened. Since that did not happen, now they have gone to court requesting the courts to annul the dissolution of parliament. We have been informed that the Tamil separatists cannot bear the reduction in their representation and have launched a program to unite the two factions through the intervention of M.A. Sumandiran.
If the United National Party and the Samik Jana Balawegya want to unite, there is no barrier for Sajid Premadasa and Ranil Wickremesinghe to hold discussions. The lives of people have been disrupted by the COVID-19 virus. Also regarding the election should have been held in October. It was led by the president that decided to hold this election early. This is a cheap attempt to politicize this confusing situation. He has always done these sort of cheap things in his political career.
The country was not reopened with the intention of holding an election. The country was reopened to revitalize the economy of the country and to allow the citizens of the country to contribute to the economy and to strengthen the people by allowing money to flow into their hands. At one time, the opposition is saying that the country should be closed down. And after that, they are saying that the country must be reopened. Their intention is purely opportunistic.
They should not think about the election but think about the people and decide for the betterment of the people. At least until the virus is eradicated from the country, I ask the government not to hold this election and stain their hands with blood.
We are ready to work according to the decisions of the Election Commission. We are not afraid of an election. We are ready to face an election even tomorrow. The opposition, on the other hand, are scared of the elections and they know that they will lose. Even the people of the country know that they are trying to postpone the election to try and evade this defeat.
Look at the way that this government is acting and try to understand what is on their mind. First, they slashed overtime allowances of public servants. This was done even before the COVID-19 outbreak. Next, they slashed the public servants' events allowance. This was also done before the outbreak. Also, they immediately suspended the salary increments for pensioners and state sector employees that was granted by our government. This was also before the outbreak. They have slashed all of these concessions. P.B. Jayasundara was part of their government even before. If you want to know more about him, you can ask Vimal Veeravansa and he will tell you all you need to know. The confidence of the people investing in Sri Lanka has plunged because of such decisions. When the secretary to the president makes a statement saying that there is a financial crisis in the country, would anyone invest money in our country? Yesterday, the stock market was closed down in 38 seconds. We request the secretary to the president who asked for the salaries of innocent state sector employees to instead go and look into whose pockets were lined by the tax concessions of about 300 billion rupees that was given by this government.
We did not make a request to hold elections immediately or in a hurry, but given the current situation, the best time is now. If the health sector does not recommend this, then that is a different case. But with the level to which we have controlled this virus today, I believe that the best time to hold an election is in the near future. This situation might get worse in the future, but at the rate we have controlled it now, this is the best time to hold the election. Holding the election according to the Parliamentary Elections Act and the Constitution is the responsibility of the Independent Election Commission. I must state that we must build a strong parliament and reconsider these so-called independent commissions.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුව ගොඩනගලා අපි මේ ස්වාධීන කියා ගන්නා කොමිෂම් ගැන නැවතත් සලකලා බලන්න කටයුතු කළ යුතුයි කියන එක අපි මේ අවස්ථාවේ කියන්න ඕනේ.
දැන් අද වෙනකොට අපේ
People have now begun to receive their water bills and electricity bills. I would like, if the government has no intention of giving the people any concessions to the people in these utility bills, and for the government to bear the losses of the people. Also in other countries, their governments are taking steps to pay the salaries and allowances of people who lost their jobs. Today, officials in our country are taking 2 to 3 salaries and are asking the people of the country and state sector employees to tighten their belts. They are requesting the people to donate their salaries. Doing this voluntarily is all right, but we would like to inform the government that we are not ready to allow the state sector employees to work without receiving their salaries.
ලැබෙන වැටුප පරිත්‍යාග කරන්නටයි කියන. ඒ ස්වේච්ඡාවෙන් කරන එක වෙනම කතාවක්. නමුත් පැහැදිලිවම රජයට කියන්න කැමති මොනම ආකාරයකින්වත් අපි සූදානම් නැහැ වැටුප් නොලබන රාජ්‍ය සේවයක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න. වහාම වැටුප් ලබා දෙන්නට තමුන්නාන්සලා කටයුතු කරන්නට ඕන.
In more local news, a discussion between Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and the Minister of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources and the General Secretary of the EPDP, Douglas Devananda, was held at the Prime Minister's residence at Vijayarama earlier today.
The Minister and the Prime Minister engaged in a discourse ranging over a number of topics. We discussed regarding two main issues. First is to release Tamil political prisoners who have been imprisoned for a prolonged period of time. We requested to adopt an empathetic strategy and to release them. The second matter was to provide solutions to the issues faced by relatives of victims of enforced disappearances.
Welcome back to the news. Corruption in Sri Lanka is not something new. We've heard this word over and over again, both when parties accuse the opposite faction of corruption as well as parties promising action against corruption. But has this corruption in Sri Lanka that has existed for over 70 years brought our country down to this position where the crisis in Sri Lanka has aggravated to a point of no return? Let's take a look.
Corruption. Ex-Minister Mahindananda Gamage visited the Bribery Commission to inquire into the progress made with respect to 19 complaints against the former government. The people who do not tolerate fraud and corruption commend this move. However, are these 19 complaints the only acts of fraud and corruption in Sri Lanka? Here is a reminder of malpractices by groups in government over the past decade and a half. Even before a month had passed since coming into power in 2015, the government of good governance was embroiled in what is now called the bond scam. A year later, the second bond scam took place. The second bond scam caused a loss of more than 8 billion rupees to the Employees Provident Fund, which was set up to assure financial stability to employees in the winter of their life. The loss to the nation, however, is yet to be calculated. The group in power before 2015 and governed the country for almost a decade cost the nation more than 28 billion rupees through scandals involving treasury bond and the stock market transactions. No matter what arguments are made to justify these claims, the people are facing the consequences of these acts and are suffering. The government from 2005 to 2015 made arrangements to procure 10 new planes for the Sri Lankan Airlines fleet. The deal, mediated by cronies and henchmen, resulted in bribes to the tune of $2 million changing hands. The government of good governance claimed the deal was marred with fraud and corruption and decided to terminate it, costing more than 30 billion rupees to the people of Sri Lanka. Both sides appointed relatives and associates to top positions at the national carrier, making it yet another burden on the general public. The Rajapaksa government from 2005 to 2015 decided it was of paramount importance to build a port in Hambantota and an airport for Mattala and started construction with a large loan from China. Hambantota port is located close to one of the main global shipping lines. However, the country eventually fell into a debt trap because of the massive loan obtained to construct the port. The government that came after alleged the constructions were marred with embezzlement of millions and termed those projects as